Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley Adams, and I'm here to talk about poker tells. Poker tells are unconscious actions made by your opponents that reveal the true strength or weakness of their hand. If you watch television or the movies, you might believe that the key to poker is to be able to read those poker tells of your opponents, and it will be like reading their cards as if they're face up. Well, this may be true in fiction, but on the green felt, poker tells are actually largely overrated, at the lower and mid-stakes games at least. This is because, especially at those games where most of us reside, people's betting action is what reveals the true strength of their hand. And the way to act against them is straightforward poker strategy, which I write about a lot on chippy.com. So most of the time, good, straightforward poker play is the way to exploit your mediocre or poor poker opponents. That being said, there are some poker tells, a few, that are very useful to know because they are relatively consistent and are not largely faked by your opponents. So what are those poker tells? First of all, staring at the flop. It's not uncommon when your opponent sees a flop for them to stare at it a little extra long when they haven't hit it at all. What's going on? They're trying to find something in the flop that will help their hand, but they're not succeeding. And so they look at it a little extra long. This means weakness, and you can exploit them by betting into them as if they haven't hit their hand. Now, it's true, this is a tell that can be faked. Somebody can deliberately stare at the flop a little extra long, even when they have hit their hand. But I have found most of the time, this is a pretty consistent tell. Your opponent looks at the flop a little extra long. It means weakness. The second poker tell involving the flop is when the flop hits, your opponent looks at it, they may immediately look down at their chip stack. This is an unconscious movement. They're not thinking, now I'm going to look down at my chips, but because the flop hit them well, because it made their hand, they're thinking of betting, and instinctively they look down. But then they look away. So the tell is a quick look down at their chip stack and then looking away. This is two tells in one. The looking down at the chip stack is the unconscious movement because they hit their flop, but then they look away as if to say, but this doesn't really interest me. Weak means strong, and this tell means they have hit something, and you should respect their bet and not assume that they're bluffing. You have to be very careful, though. Some people know this well-known tell and try to fake it. I'd say it's about 80% or so accurate. Third tell, double checking their hole cards. It's interesting, if you're an experienced player, once you look at your down cards when they're dealt to you, or when it's your turn to bet, you shouldn't have to look at them again. Two cards, you should be able to remember it. But many inexperienced, even somewhat experienced players check their hole cards after they initially check them. And what I have found is that this happens a lot when the flop is all of one suit or when the turn card is a third suited card. If they then check their down cards again, it means usually that they're on a flush draw. They haven't hit their flush because people remember easily that they have two suited cards and what suit they are. But if they're two different suits, they may not instinctively recall what the suit of each of them is. And so they check again. 3 hearts hit on the flop. They want to see if they have a 4th heart. And so when they double check their hole cards, that is surely a sign of weakness. And I typically bet into them with the expectation that they'll fold if the bet is large enough that it doesn't make sense for them to draw. Fourth poker tell, talking about the hand, especially talking about the hand when you are trying to decide whether to call their bet. So, for example, the flop is 2 to a suit, the turn is a third to the suit, and the opponent bets very big as if they have a flush. Do they have it? You're trying to decide whether to call the bet. They then start to talk about the hand. So, what do you think I have? Or, you know me, I never bluff. Or, what do you have? Anything like that. Generally speaking, when they start to talk about the hand, to try to talk you into calling or talk you off your calling or whatever, they tend to have a really strong hand. And what's going on is they just got a bolt of energy by having hit their hand, and they're releasing it by talking about it. Now, it's not 100%. Some players may do this when they're bluffing, but usually a bluff has people silent, solid, so that you'll believe them. But when they talk, they tend to have it. So believe them and fold most of the time. The final tell I want to talk about is chip grabbing. And I'm talking about out of turn, your opponent grabs some chips as if they want to bet. This is usually a sign of weakness. What's going on? Well, at the mediocre and lower level of poker players, they think they'll fool you into believing they are so excited about their hand that they can't wait to bet. Usually this is a fake tell that they're trying to throw off, and it means weakness. They haven't hit their hand, they want to get a free round, and so they grab the chips to fool you. Occasionally, with a really new player, it's a true tell that they are excited about their hand and they just can't keep track of the order and they're actually grabbing the chips to bet. But most of the time, believe that they are weak, bet into them, and you'll be rewarded. As a conclusion, just to sum up what I've said, reading tells alone will not make you a winning poker player, especially not at the lower level games where players tend to make many exploitable mistakes by their conscious betting action. But when you add these 5 poker tells, reading these poker tells to that solid play, they should help you win money in the long run. Good luck.